Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about dungeons and how to design them. If you haven't been with us before, we are uh, Dice on Included. Basically, we're here to just play some video games, just kind of bullshit around, and just talk about what we do for video games, or running games, I should say, for D&D. So a big one is how to have a decently designed dungeon. Um, I think one of the hardest parts is the planning. There's so much to it, and sometimes it can be very overwhelming. Just kind of like having one, the layout, but two, the lore, and how those two things come together. And while I'll be talking about it, we'll be playing a little bit of Overwatch. Let's terrorize some people as Wrecking Ball today. I'm by no means a Overwatch professional. I'm actually pretty terrible, but hey, let's just have some fun and play some games. Um, so first up with like dungeons, one of the biggest things is why is it there? Uh, why is it even in the world in the first place? Um, obviously you have your story of like um, why your players are visiting it.
Arriving at Watchpoint
Um,
Gibraltar.
but as far as
Prepare your defenses.
its layout, it's going to be going
Select
off of
your hero.
your intentions of what exists in that world. So, for example, is it a natural dungeon versus an inhabited place that was abandoned or is still there? So, for example, like in my game that I'm running, uh, I have a mine that is kind of like a natural mine, but has been inhabited by a necromancer who has used its extraplanar portals to mine strange and exotic minerals and metals and stuff. So you can do a lot of stuff with something that existed before and had been taken over by somebody with a purpose. Uh, and that kind of goes along with the purpose versus its natural reason of being there. And a major part of like how you challenge your players is the mystique of that. The what are we even walking into kind of mentality, because it can be kind of like scary, like, oh man, there's like a bunch of random stuff here, like whether it's like traps or creatures or whatever. So natural versus built obviously is like something that has been you know made by somebody's hands versus carved through nature or extraplanar forces can be interesting to draw out. One thing that I try to remember too is like when things are natural, they're not really even. So even if you're not an artist, one thing to keep in mind is that when you are drawing something out that is a natural occurrence, typically it's uneven, it's not symmetrical, it's random, it's jagged. Whereas something that is man-made, typically they try to make it very symmetrical and even for structural reasons. Squares, archways, and things like that. And sometimes it's just kind of in between where a mine was they had like a mine shaft and all that, but they put like an area that was secured, where it was safe. So, for example, with the mine, you could have like an area that is like a common area that has like structural integrities and stuff, like pillars or braces alongside the walls. Um, Another big problem with designing a dungeon that I hear a lot is traps. Sometimes traps are really cool, and other times you're like, this is really, really fucking irritating. To just like, oh yeah, every couple of feet it's a trap, and it's kind of like back in old Pokemon games. Like if anyone remembers the damn rocket towers, or it's like, oh yay, teleporters. Why? Like who built their place like this? And so like it's one thing to like have a reason to like throw off intruders, but also it's kind of like imagine working for these people who are just like God damn it, I can't find my way to the bathroom because everything's a teleporter or a or like an energy blast keeps hitting me in the face every time I try to go make copies. You know, it's just like it's one of those things where it's like why like or even like if the traps are able to be disabled uh, or disarmed. I mean, it's not always just a matter of like breaking the trap or you know sometimes there's like a security system.
This will restore you. Yeah, thank you.
Um, but also too like items. You know, a lot of times with items, there is things that are left behind, things that are stored, and things that are a lure to kind of mess with people. Because, like, let's face it, you put something valuable there, people know it's probably sketchy, but they're still interested and want to press that evil red button
McCree, top left.
of like who left this here? I want to try to get this like mysterious cup that's just chilling on a pedestal. Like people are curious. They're always like, oh, there's this random thing here. What does this do? They're gonna poke it with a stick from behind, you know.
Now, hold on.
60 seconds remaining.
Ah, that was a mistake. But the difference between different types of traps is, for example, something left behind. So, like, maybe they had a bear trap that was kind of near the entrance. They didn't, like, sit there and, like, put it there, but, you know, it was left there due to inactivity. You know, it was a logging camp with a cave in the back, and they just had to run because, you know, there was a, you know, let's say like a giant who inhabited the cave. You know, like you can't just like disarm everything you had for
10 seconds.
you know the last second because the giant came in. Like you would leave that there. Some things are deliberate, like a explosive rune. So that's always kind of fun. It's like something magical. One trap that I did one time was, and this is really messed up, so only do this if you intend on being really lethal. But I did a Glyph of Warding, and then on the Glyph of Warding is stored the spell Hold Person. Underneath the Glyph of Warding is a trapdoor that when it's set off, basically it drops. And when they drop down, there could be anything like a swarm of rats or like a, you know, a bunch of rabid goblins, who knows. But like it's something that is set there, intentional guarding something. You don't want to have traps like every couple feet just like there to terrorize, because then it feels like why are there traps here? They're going to be looking around the room for something valuable or something, or a hidden passage. And, like, traps are made to ward off. They take resources to set down. So, like, try to think of, like, why would someone put a trap there? It needs that purpose. Sometimes it could be a trap, like, meaning, like, oh, you know, it can end up being, like, trying to trick people into thinking that there is something valuable there and there's not. But you don't want to do it too often, you know, kind of like the Goldilocks zone of stuff. I like using the phrase like the bathroom puzzle problem. Like if you guys have ever played like Resident Evil or like those kind of games where there's like you're just trying to get across like the kitchen and there's a weird ass puzzle trying to stop you from getting there. It's like you need 3 medallions to open up the kitchen door, and it's just like, who built this place? Why? Like why? Like I don't know. It's just like needlessly complicated and barriers for like strange mundane rooms.
Justice
Um,
will be done.
All right, game face on.
Another kind of problem is like items and stuff. Items are one of those complicated things that even I struggle with. Of like, are the players gonna want to use this? Am I giving them too many items? Am I not giving them enough? Because we've all had that situation where like, here's a really cool item, and it's basically like a Disney souvenir mug situation where like it's hella cool, but no one ever uses it because they already got all their slots filled, or like, and you know they don't want to sell the other stuff. So you know, and also who would leave super powerful magical items laying around, or like money, or like or like Skyrim when they're like, here's a master level lock, and inside is like a piece of cheese and 4 gold coins. You know, it's things like that where it becomes kind of more of a frustrating challenge than it is like a rewarding challenge. And like not all challenges are going to be like, oh yeah, perfect reward, but you know, you don't want it to just be like a burden where
Boosters engaged.
stuff like that, you know. Because I'll be honest, I get kind of pissed when it's like you play a game or something and there's this really awesome, crazy difficult lock, and then there's literally nothing, just a waste of time inside. Um, I know some of it's like RNG, like random numbers generator kind of reward system, but personally, I don't like. Some people like tables and like random items that you could get in D&D. I'm not that much of a fan myself because I feel like it could lead to like, you know, just like stuff that you didn't plan, and that like, and in my opinion, it's like if you can't plan for your own game in D&D, you're setting yourself up a lot for some really like out of your control situations, and it becomes like your ability to like improvise and rather than your ability to control a situation. And everyone's different. I'm more of a control person where I'd rather be able to like know what I'm putting in my game rather than like a random creature or item generator. It's just more stress than I'm like willing to grab and like shove into my game, you know. Um, Baddies are also a really common thing. We're like, well, what do you even put in there? Like, how do you know what to put in, and like, and all that? And sometimes it's just a matter of like reading the monster manual
Get into position.
and just kind of like exploring around, because like sometimes there's creatures that I've never really touched on or like never heard of, and they're really cool. You know, you can end up like really finding something awesome just by looking at where they're found and like, you know, things like that. You know, personally, one of my favorites is like fiends is one of my favorites, but like they don't fit in every situation. So baddies, I usually kind of I kind of categorize them in 3 categories that help me as wander, guardians, and bosses. So wanderers are just something that shambles around, and it's not really there for a purpose, which could be like naturally occurring creatures that are just like waiting for prey, or just happen to be passing through. Guardians are something that was deliberately put there or is watching over something, whether it's from their own accord or being ordered to do so. Bosses are pretty obvious, things that are in charge, things that are a major obstacle for
30 seconds remaining.
many things going on in the dungeon. So like that could be like the head bad guy for the dungeon. It could be something that it created, such as a golem. It could be a lot of really cool different things, and like not all
10 seconds.
encounters are a hit it till the hit points are gone encounter, which is like some of my more favorite ones. Sometimes it's just like, you know, mindfuckery where they're just like being messed with saving throws, and not even necessarily that you're failing a saving throw, just that just in general that maybe like, for example,
Victory.
they are a sensory overload sort of area. So it can even be like they think they're seeing things on the side, even if they succeed to save. Maybe they think they see something, and you leave it open to interpretation of whether or not they saw something. Not everything is hit the players until their hit points are gone. Sometimes it's throwing them off or making them worried. Also, I think a really, like, one of the harder things about dungeons is whether or not it's long enough or too short. One of the biggest things I will say, I know it's not always like you want things to be a surprise, but talk to your party about it. I talked to my party and they said that like they're okay with dungeon crawls. One of my players really loves dungeon crawls, but sometimes it could be a little long-winded. It's kind of like those TV shows where you're sitting there like in there for a long period of time, like in a certain area or in a certain room, fighting a certain enemy, and it's like, God damn, how long have we been fighting this thing? Like, how long have they been in this like in this labyrinth? You know, at a certain point, like it becomes like,
Select your hero.
let's move on to the next phase. You know, it's okay to have like a long dungeon crawl if that is what you're going for, but like I myself like to have like very like world-driven encounters and dungeons. So the one that I'm working on is like I said, a necromancer controlled mine. There is a area that he mined, and there's an area that was existing beforehand, and you know, not to go into too much spoilers with my own party members because they might watch this, but it's a matter of not necessarily like going from point A to point B, but it's also a matter of what risks do you want to take in certain rooms. There could be wings, there could be like sectors and different things like that of like it could disable certain functions of the dungeon, or it could release other things from other sections, like say you blow the power out, and that would open up like the prison section of where they keep a lot of the dangerous experiments, you know, all kinds of stuff you can really play with, different sections and reasons for you know, being in a dungeon. Not everything in the dungeon is in the bad guy's control. That's one of my favorite things, is when things go wrong for the bad guys. It's really interesting to have that. I've been frozen. So it could be like, if anyone's ever played World of Warcraft, you know, like Naxxramas, like there's some dungeons where it's like they had controlled undead, and they had like a certain wing for like what they did with them. You know, you could, in order to get past this point, you need to like disable a, you need to disable like a force field or maybe a defense system. Like you can't just like, oh, I'm gonna put some thieves' tools in it, and it disables the traps. You know, sometimes you need to depower them. You know, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, and sometimes players themselves like present really cool opportunities for you to play on. Like I have a druid, a spore druid, and in my campaign, who is a crazy mad scientist who just like can't like resist looking at things that are like fungal and things like that. And it's like you can really get people to press red buttons depending on like their interests as a character, whether it's like their profession or their passions. You know, it could be a lot of cool stuff, like a wizard who's trying to like unlock, you know, the secrets of life and death, and the necromancer has some of those answers, and it becomes a question of, do they want to like press the red button and like learn about these kind of things, or do they want to do the right thing and push forward and not look at many of these challenges as things to look into, but things to defeat. And if they defeat those challenges, they may not get to see some of those interesting unlocks lore-wise of like personal passions. So that's always like a really cool thing to like present to them, is moral dilemmas within the dungeon, because it becomes far more than just like, oh, these are things I need to like overcome, and more of a what do I do? Do I allow myself to look into this and maybe like endanger those around me, or all kinds of different little problems you can present. I find that like things like diseases or conditions can throw people off a lot. Where like, you know, you can become poisoned, and they're like, oh man, I gotta get rid of this poison, or you know, them using spell slots to overcome many of the challenges and stuff. They'll like want to sit there and like rest and like do short rests like constantly, or long rests. I find that's more of a thing with new players, not necessarily all the time, but in me running games for work, there's been a lot of new players like, oh man, I'm down hit points in like 3 spell slots. I'm gonna go ahead and do a long rest, and that's a really vulnerable spot to be when you only got like 2 people on watch or whatever, but at the same time need to remain safe. You know, it puts you in a vulnerable spot.
Victory.
I mean, not all party members sleep too. So like, there's a character in my game that is a warlock who took that pact where you can not have to sleep, which is actually really cool. But then that becomes like you can't really surprise them when they're asleep necessarily unless he rolls low, which is possible, of course, because you know, dice like to really mess with you. But in a hostile environment where like there's so many environmental things, there's like wandering creatures, you know, like passive perception in a dungeon. People are like, well, it's overpowered to have a high passive perception. But imagine like it's like those rainforest tapes where it's just everything all at once, like ambient noises that are going to be picking up, and that's up to them to decipher that. But it's you know, it's in my opinion, using descriptions within dungeons, using your sensory, can be really successful. Describing scenes can really challenge them in ways that make them afraid. So using your senses of describe what it sounds like. There are, as you're walking through, you can hear the clatter of stones skipping as you're walking through and kicking up dirt. You can hear dripping sounds somewhere down the way. Smell. You can smell a musty, you can smell like a musty sort of heavy scent on the air that sounds like rot or smells like rot. You know, touch, as you're kind of like going through and you step down, you press your hand against the wall and it's moist, and there is what appears to be mold growing and it's a slick sort of slimy texture, indicating kind of what might be down here. Taste, like even like you can kind of incorporate taste with like when you breathe inward, you can taste like a sour taste on your tongue, maybe indicating that there is some sort of spores in the air, you know, and they're gonna want to try to figure out what that is. Going back to design, like I said, natural and natural occurring things such as creatures, plants, and things like that can be crucial to your design. So, for example, like plant overgrowth. Sometimes, like people who build dungeons don't necessarily like build through nature. Sometimes they build with it, or maybe they don't. Like maybe they break down trees, or they pull down like naturally occurring issues that they may run into. Damn. That was intense. Yeah, I was gonna try to play Knights of the Old Republic 2 as a stream, but for some reason it wasn't letting me play it because it wasn't. You can't really do it in window mode, and the system I use on this for like streaming wants to do window mode. It's probably just me being not tech savvy enough to overcome that, but you know.
I need healing. This will protect us.
Allow me to repair the damage.
Raising the volume. Vamos esculachar.
Cast this forth.
Personne n'échappe.
Come on, let's break this.
My will made real.
Taking the. Move it, people. Oh, this is my jam.
We're taking that objective.
I need healing. Oh, turn it up.
Made real.
Need healing.
And sometimes these games get intense and I get distracted. Sorry about that. Well, if anyone ever plays this game, hit me up and maybe play. If anyone ever watches this and has like specific questions about DMing, I am more than happy to do, requests. But yeah, dungeon crafting is hard. One of my good friends and one of the players is really good, in my opinion, with tables. I'm not. I'm not really good with number generation with that kind of stuff. But sometimes if you plan out things like wandering monsters, you can make a table of like what wanders in or what could be a problem.
You know, never ruin my tie, Bash.
So yeah,
Too rich.
dungeon crafting is fun.
What an interesting hypothesis.
I think one of the more specific things that I have encountered that I had trouble with was the items, knowing what to put in. That's always really hard for me. It's like, I'm pretty good at making the items. Knowing when I'm putting too much is kind of a challenge myself. And I'll probably say this in every video. Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses are important to learning. I'm really good at making good villains. I'm not so good at making, at like keeping track of how long it takes to get to an area. I will forget like that it took 2 weeks when I thought it took a month. I mean it's not that extreme, but it's sometimes you're trying to figure out like how long it took and all that, and it can be kind of complicated, especially when a minute of combat in the game is like 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes a couple hours of actual time. So it's pretty crazy with like trying to keep track of all this stuff, and give yourself a break too. I mean, DMing is a lot of work. DMing is not easy. Anyone who tells you that has not done it. There are very difficult aspects of it. You got to be a designer. You got to be, I'm probably like on so many like weird lists of like strange Google searches for things I've tried to like learn with like professional crime or some stuff.
I cast this forth.
But yeah, I like basically me and Josh were playing this game one time, and we just kept kind of like BSing about all the things that we do as DMs, and in our groups we kind of like alternate as DMs, so we get to kind of see what everybody else is doing. So it's really cool how you can kind of see what everybody does. And we kind of say it's like the Triforce of DMing, because it's like you get to see people who are very different than you, but like how they do stuff. And it really gives me ideas to see my friends engineer something like that. Do it so much different than I would. Ooh, that was close.
Injured again.
Never mind. That was actually not close. I just died.
Oh, let's break it. Damn.
But I also take inspiration from video games that I play, of different things that could get challenged by.
Past this fort.
You know, you can see like different creatures that are obviously very close to like pop culture things, but you can also like pull from multiple places.
Now, hold on.
Push on.
You're welcome to join.
Get in there, Bob.
Oh, let's break it. Damn.
Don't worry, my friend. I am your shield.
I think that's pretty much all that I have. Sorry, sometimes I get a little distracted by getting my butt whooped on this game. But as far as like dungeon crafting goes, all those questions. So to recap, why is it there? What's in it and why? Natural dungeon versus inhabited. Was it something that was there already, or something that somebody had created? Good traps versus bad, meaning like, you know, oh yay, another spike trap that just like sets off as I walk past it. You know, like it's not. And those are fine, but like sometimes it's like good to have something interesting rather than just every couple of feet there's something that pokes you.
Don't worry, my friend.
You know, you don't want like bathroom puzzle problems of like in order to get to the bathroom you gotta like do this weird, you know, puzzle of like 4 different like medallions in order to like, you know, get to those places. It's just kind of an odd thing to do. You know, there's a Goldilocks zone that you don't want to like make every place accessible all the time. Damn it. But also you don't want to make everything a damn burden. You know, items and lore, what's left behind, what's left because they stored it there, and what's left to lure people to some sort of danger. Baddies, do they wander? Are they guardians or are they bosses? Link, ask your party what they find fun and interesting before you do something, just as a like tester. And then why would someone make a very deep chasm? Why would someone make going that deep? Ask those questions, make it make sense in the world, and you should be great. Drawing it out is, again, going back to natural dungeon versus inhabited. How you're going to draw it out is very specific to its history. One day, maybe I'll get my drawing tablet out and show people kind of like how I draw things out. But for those of you who did join, I really enjoy having everybody here who does watch. My name is Chris, or the Gatman, and this has been Dice Not Included. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope to see you guys next time. Later.